if you are ready to have this new year be the year where you meet someone, where you deepen the connection that you're already in, or you want to be closer without the anxiety, then stick around because, girly, I got you. And we're going to talk all about what works, what doesn't work when it comes to setting the standard for the year. All right. And make sure you stick around towards the end because I always drop a hot tip. And today's hot tip is going to be what I do personally every single year to bring my partner closer. And if you're also really new here, I used to be really anxiously attached. He used to be avoidant, and now we have a secure marriage. So I'm gonna share all the details. And if you're new here, I'm Claire. Just like I said, I used to be anxiously attached, and I love supporting overachieving girlies be less anxious in their relationships, because I guarantee if you're here or if you resonate with what I say, that you are really good at lots of things or even one thing. You might have letters behind your name, like a PhD or an MD, or you are a CEO of your own company, or you are an academic. These are all types of women that I love serving and supporting and are my one-on-one clients or in my programs because I get it. I get it. Where things are working everywhere else except for our romantic life. So you're in good hands. So let's dive in. Now, I have a lot of feelings around resolutions, I'll be honest, all right? And if you didn't know, I have a long-standing background in fitness. So I have been a personal trainer. I've been a strength coach. I've been a 500-hour yoga teacher. I've been featured in Yoga Journal, which is the foremost magazine for yoga. I've written articles. I've modeled for them. I was the only female head strength and conditioning coach for Denver Public Schools. So I know gyms. I know the cycles of gyms, and every year you can count on it. I can bank on it that January is packed with faces I would never see in the gym before or in the yoga class. And by February, they are not there anymore. They've moved on. So I have seen it year after year why resolutions don't work. And I have experienced this again and again and again. And so it doesn't really matter whether it's fitness or it's how we approach our dating life or our relationships or our career. We tend to have the same patterns in our behavior. And I see that to be true. So here's why I believe resolutions really don't work. And it's actually not because making a promise doesn't work, and there's more to that. But I think resolutions don't actually work because of how we make the resolution. And what I mean by that is most people make resolutions from a space and an energy of contraction, of restriction, and of fear. Because essentially, contraction, restriction is coming from a fear place. And fear, when we try to drive behavior from a place of fear, it doesn't go well. And I know this because I'm a dog mom, and before our current dog, we had a sweet angel of 15 years. And I'll admit, I was young when I first got this dog. It was my dog from college. And I would try to change his behavior from like this, bad dog, naughty dog, kind of this fear and like making him a little scared of naughty dog, don't do that. And those first couple years, I mean, he was a terrier, a West Highland White Terrier, and he was crazy. And I look back because our dog now, we use more of a gentle parenting approach, right? We don't shame or blame him. And I can just see the difference. And my first dog he was such an angel. And, I was growing and learning as we all do. But that contraction and that restriction and that energy around instilling some fear in him was not beneficial. I look at the connection that my dog and I had, and it would 100% could have been deeper. But because I was in this place of fear and contraction, his behavior reflected that. His behavior as a young dog was cray-cray. And we can see how that plays out when we try to make promises or make resolutions from the lens and through the lens of fear, of contraction, of restriction. And we cannot bully ourselves. Well, I take that back. That is an option. We can bully ourselves, and I'll say from personal experience, bullying myself, punishing myself, and I'll just take fitness as a great example, that only works until it doesn't. It's actually not beneficial. You might get some short-term impact, but long-term, treating ourselves with punishment or a lens of contraction or fear, it actually doesn't really change behavior. In fact, it makes it worse. So that's why most people, when they make resolutions from the space of fear or I have to punish myself, I've got to lose the 10 pounds, what tends to happen is that they're punishing themselves into changing, but they don't actually make the long-term change because personally, I believe it's the energy and the approach and how they're doing it, the energy behind it. And if you're new here, energy is everything. Energy being how we think, how we feel, our subconscious thoughts, our subconscious feelings are always driving the machine. They're driving our behavior. So, and most of us come from a place of contraction, of constriction, and fear because that is what we learned. I'll say that again because that's really important. I hope you pick this up, that we act subconsciously or consciously from what we were modeled, what we were taught, what we picked up. Those of you who have kids, or if you want kids, you better believe that kids don't always listen, but they watch. They're watching. And so just like the children that you have or want to have are watching and picking up what you model for them, we are also acting out what was modeled, what was shown to us. So if we had a household, and I'll just say I'm a person of color. If you didn't know that, I don't know if you're listening on the podcast. I'm a person of color. I was raised Filipino. And yeah, 100%. My household was very Catholic Filipino household. It was very strict. We had to toe a fine line of excellence, and anything below an A was like absolutely, it was scary. It was so scary, life-threatening it felt like to get anything less than excellent. So if that was what was modeled or how we learned to survive, then we take that on as adults. So those of you who are high achievers, who set the bar really high, and then you reach a goal, and then it's just like the next bar, and then the next bar, and the next bar. It's like that gym machine that is like the steps that keep going, and it never ends. It just keeps on going. That's what it can feel like internally. And when we take that energy out into the world, we can see why it doesn't work. If we treat a relationship like another achievement, or I have to get this, that energy, people can feel that. People don't want to feel like they're a check mark or something that you accomplished. And when it comes to a romantic relationship, intimate relationship, people are really sensitive. They can feel the vibe right away. So again, if we're approaching your resolution of, oh, I'm going to meet the guy this year, and you treat it with this energy of, I've got to get it, I've got to make this happen, I'm coming from this place of contraction and fear, it's like running towards a deer in the forest. You're just going to scare people off. You're going to push away intimacy through the energy of of how you're showing up. So I don't believe in resolutions that come from this place of contraction and fear, because we give up on them. They don't work out. We get discouraged because we're shaming and blaming ourselves. So I personally don't really think that resolutions, the way that our society has taught them, are really healthy, whether it's for fitness and especially for love. All right. Now, instead of making a resolution, I would invite you to, instead of this place of contraction and fear and control, instead offering your brain and your behaviors a focus. All right. And a focus is very different. Focus is a very different energy than a fixation. Okay. We can all just think about and feel into those two words of focus versus a fixation, right? If we're fixated on something, like when my dog is fixated on the toy, it doesn't matter if the TV's on or there's a whistle, he just is focused on and fixated on the toy. Now, there's a yoga tool that I recommend. And when I think about the difference between a focus for the year instead of a resolution, instead of a fixation, there's something in yoga when students are doing a balancing pose, a one-legged balancing pose, whether that's Ardha Chandrasana or half moon pose or a tree pose, Vrikshasana, that there's a word called drishti, where your gaze is focused on something. But what's interesting about that word and how I've seen it work for me in finding balance in a pose, just like finding balance in relationship and dating, that yes, you might be focused on a place on the wall that's not moving, but it's not like you're not aware. It's like a soft focus where something, even if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my face, but everything else might be a little blurry. And that's truly not just from I'm doing a balancing pose perspective where you're looking at one thing, but you're still aware of what's going on. It's the same kind of concept when it comes to having a focus or an intention for the new year, but not a fixation on it. I hope you're feeling and acknowledging the difference here, that fixation is, I'll just say, unhealthy, right? We don't want to be overly fixated on, trigger warning, a number on the scale, right? We can see how that can be a really slippery slope. But if our focus and our intention is on, I'm going to eat more vegetables. Honestly, that was one of my focuses for last year. I needed to eat more vegetables, more green vegetables, more vegetables to heal my gut. And it worked. It honestly worked. That focus of where was my intention is so much more beneficial than this contraction around, I have to eat these vegetables. And just you can feel the difference between a fixation and a focus. So really consider that, where your energy can be focused and still aware of what's going on and taking in the whole picture versus a fixation. All right. So that would be my offering to you for 2024. So instead of being fixated on, I have to get a man, I have to get this guy to like me, or I have to get a ring, or I have to get married, instead, invite a focus, invite an energy. So maybe the focus, for example, if you're dating, is staying open. I know that was something that was really a challenge for me. I dated all kinds of guys. I dated outside of what I thought, I'm making little bunny fingers, what I thought I wanted. I tried and sampled different guys. I tried different things. And the same concept could be used for, if your focus is to stay open, it could be in a relationship where, okay, you're together for a year and a half or 2 years and you're open to seeing, wow, are we going to move to the next step? I'm open to continuing on with this person as possibly a life partner versus being fixated on a ring. All right. Those are just some examples, and I hope you really take those examples and apply them to your own life and where you're at, where how can you stay focused and be focused, but not contracted and fixated on an outcome. Okay. So here's a hot tip that I do every single year that I've invited and made an intention and brought into every single year. And honestly, this is going to be my 3rd year of this specific focus that's really truly brought my husband and I closer. And really, gosh, I wish I had this tip or really stayed with it in the beginning, but that was truly about self-trust. If you want to bring somebody closer, when we deeply trust ourselves, when we are in our own center, when we can trust our commitment and our follow through, we trust ourselves to actually follow through with our agreements and what we say to ourselves, that is what builds confidence. That's actually what brings and attracts and magnetizes people to you, whether just a random person or your partner. So I invite you, if you want to have 2024 be the year for you, then I invite you to have a focus of self-trust. Self-trust is so, so, so important. And if you are just a little bit of a self-sabotager, you are not really feeling like you follow through in every area of your life. And by the way, I would definitely say and relate to a couple years ago, like thinking that I was really uh, a big, I trusted myself, but the reality I wasn't. It was a big front. I would slip on some agreements, or I would be flaky, or I would not follow through. And I might be able to do that in some areas. Like I was definitely not that way with my yoga practice, but in other areas and showing up for my business or in certain relationships, I actually didn't trust myself. So I invite, if you are wanting to bring people closer to you and create more intimacy, it starts with trusting yourself. And if you are struggling with self-trust or self-sabotage, the opposite of self-trust is self-sabotage, then I have a challenge coming up in January. I'm so excited about it. I'll put the link to sign up in the show notes. And this challenge, we're going to dive deep into how can you be a person that is working on love, whether you're in a relationship or you're single. How can you make dating an act of finding your soulmate? How can you not self-sabotage, build more self-trust? All that's going to be happening in my free dating challenge this January. I'll put the link in the show notes below, and it's free. Why not? Let's do it. And I'll help you and guide you for 3 days together. It's going to be so awesome. I cannot wait to have you in it. And if you have questions, ask me in the comments, and I'm sending you love. Happy New Year. Mwah.